I make my own rules, one Bonko party at a time.
I write history and I read celebrities. I am JMZ.
Life is a classroom, and I'm here to teach.
Hello, welcome back to part 2 of our episode with Jason Herbert. You're here with me, Casey.
Dr. Jane Mill, the millionaires.
Max Spear, nothing's changed.
So this season, we decided to shake things up a little bit. And each episode, we're really splitting into 2 episodes. This allows for more historians on Housewives all the time. And you know me and how I love a game. And Jessica is so up on celebrity everything all the time that we realized we also needed to have a new segment to allow us to indulge the things that we like.
Without getting sued.
So this was the other reason we needed to split things. This is the other reason we had to split episodes into 2, because we decided to create a new segment called Allegedly. Now, what do we do in Allegedly?
We ask questions like, was that Kelly relieving himself, or was that him playing with his mouth going...
Allegedly, he was making brownies.
Except we do that with much more interesting, heavy-hitting...
Celebrity
gossip.
Bravo celebrities.
Allegedly allows us to spin and to speculate and to just assume the worst of Bravo celebrities, right? Without getting sued. We found, especially in first season, we were talking about possibilities of like what Housewives were doing.
We just imagined we were there in the room.
Yeah. Understanding their motivations, and we kept saying allegedly because it's libel, right? To like, if you don't say that. So now we turned it into a game.
Yeah, a whole new segment.
So the second half of our show, we are going to be speaking to Jason about movies, Hollywood, different images, and what everyone's watching during COVID. And unfortunately, we lost Chadwick Boseman on August 28th. And here was a person who was very conscious about the kind of roles that he took. He said that he would never play a slave. He left all my children when they were going to give him parents on the show that were addicts. He was very, very committed as an actor and as a person to exemplifying the best in not just Africa America, but in people in general. So rest in peace to our king of Wakanda.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Jessica. And now, here's the exciting conclusion of last week's Bonko Party Game Break and interview with Jason Herbert on Historians on Housewives. Okay, so our last question in our Bonko Party Game Break. According to Rotten Tomatoes, as of 2020, what was the highest grossing film ever made? And again, bonus points if you get something else. So, right, the very first question of the movie section was what was most expensive. Now we're talking about what made the most.
Grossing.
That's easy. That's Endgame.
Okay.
I'm going to put Endgame.
I agree. I think it's Endgame. But
would you and Jessica have locked in Endgame if Jason didn't have so much confidence?
Probably not. I was already thinking about saying Gone with the Wind again, because I know that like Gone with the Wind made a serious amount of money per capita at the time that it came out.
Wait a minute. What about Wakanda? What about Black Panther?
As highest grossing?
Yes. You gave me a moment to pause because you said, would you do that if Jason didn't agree? What about Black Panther?
Okay. Does anybody else want to lock in a second choice? Or
is like another
Infinity War? Okay. Jason, how many can you actually pull out of the top 10? I just want to see.
Can I pull out top 10?
Yeah.
Adjusted for inflation?
Yeah.
All right. Let's go with Infinity War and Endgame, Avatar, Star Wars: A New Hope. I want to say adjusted for inflation. Black Panther is up there. The first Jurassic Park, perhaps.
Titanic.
Titanic's got to be in there.
Titanic definitely. Which we've never shown on HHN.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, that might.
Ooh, below deck.
Jessica, there's a lot we could do with Titanic.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna leave this episode definitely as a cliffhanger of like what will
What are we going to screen?
HMH do? Jessica's not happy.
Question? Yeah, I'm not happy about that. What is the answer to the question? And I'm like, oh, it's not even resonating in my soul. I don't care about the woman on the little raft and why she pushed Jack off.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen Titanic?
I've seen bits of it.
I'm king of the world.
Yeah, I know the annoying parts, but it's like I remember when Cameron won, and he comes in and he does the I'm king of the world, and it was like, really? I mean, yeah, Titanic is this film that I just could not get myself to watch. It's like one of those things. It's like, and then it became like you talk to those people who've never seen Star Wars, and you're like, you've never seen Star Wars? What's wrong with you? And I feel that way. I'll watch it eventually, but it'll have to be the moment where it's like, oh, it's on Netflix. Now is the time.
I feel like this.
Oh yeah.
This just became.
I'm ideologically opposed to Titanic.
Yeah, but it's like working out. Like I am not opposed to working out, but I'm never going to go out of my way to work out at this point. Yeah.
I feel like this just became like an H-on-H confessional.
Yeah, what was the answer? I'm so irritated with Titanic being even mentioned in you need to respond to this.
Okay, so Jessica, your hunch on Black Panther, it's number 12. So it was close. 11, Age of Ultron. 10, Frozen 2. 9,
we forgot Frozen.
Oh, we forgot Disney.
9, Fast and Furious 7.
How could I forget Fast and Furious?
The movie in which they started off stealing VHS players.
Ryan Connor. I mean, I don't even necessarily like a gentleman who's blonde with blue eyes, but come on.
See, I don't think it would have been. It's Fast and Furious number 7, so it's Furious 7, so it's like well after Paul Walker.
Yeah, he would have been gone.
Yeah. 8, Marvel's The Avengers.
Okay.
7, The Lion King.
The Lion King.
The 1994 version?
The 2019 version.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Well, that wasn't a repeat. People didn't go back twice. That was first time viewers. Money wasn't made on repeats because no one liked that.
6,
Interesting.
Jurassic World.
Okay.
And like even looking at the movie poster that they put in Rotten Tomatoes makes me like have a bit of anxiety because it's that big shark fish eating another big shark fish, and like I am having a moment. Okay.
Is Jaws on this list?
No.
Oh.
5 is Infinity War. 4, Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens.
That makes sense.
3, Titanic. 2, Avatar. And number 1, Endgame. So I feel like Jason really swept.
Dominated.
Yes.
It would have been so embarrassing if he didn't. That would have been so embarrassing.
Yeah, I was sweating bullets in my cargo shorts over here.
Yeah, like your brand would have been totally, it would have been devastating.
So give me 1 second to calculate the final tally so we can award first, second, third.
I'm sure people are on the edges of their seat for like where I'm gonna come in at.
Stuck in the 405, they're stuck in 405 traffic that really doesn't have traffic right now. They're just stuck waiting for the answer to who won this game.
Well, Jessica, you did not come in third place this time.
Congrats. How badly did I lose?
In third place today, we have Max with 10 points. In second place, we have Jessica with 13 points.
Proud of myself.
And in first place, we have Jason with 15 points. And we're going to come back to the podcast. And Jessica, lead us in.
Okay. Well, this is probably not that exciting way to lead it in, but we're going to talk about your actual dissertation work.
Sure.
Remember that? We are also actually scholars in the field.
Mm-hmm.
This is a complete nerdy question.
Sure.
Okay, completely. So Lorena Walsh, historian of colonial America, did an essay years ago about colonial America and their beef patterns, right? And I found this fascinating. She cataloged how people were eating. She talked about what this meant about how many cattle must have been on the farm. It was, of course, entitled "Where's the Beef?" Hardy har har. So, based on your work, what can you tell us about what cows have to do with the environmental, social, political, and economic transformations in Indigenous Florida?
Well, not to oversell it, but they were responsible for the entire transformation of Indigenous Florida in the 17th and 18th century. So cattle change everything. And really, the first thing you need to do is go back and actually talk to modern members, contemporary members of the Seminole Tribe of Florida, who will tell you just how important this animal is, not only to the tribe's integrity. Right now, the tribe itself possesses over 10,000 head of beef. They're the fourth largest cow-calf operation in the state of Florida and the 12th largest cow-calf operation in the entire country. Seminole Tribe of Florida is a massive beef producer. And when you talk to tribal members today, tribal ranchers today, they'll tell you just how important this animal is. These animals were obviously introduced. Virginia DeJohn Anderson wrote this terrific book years ago called Creatures of Empire, right? They really introduced these animals as these colonial agents. As the Spanish came in, the English and the French, they all brought with them animals from their old lands to try to reproduce these new Europes. And Seminole Indians, just like other Indians elsewhere in North and South and Central America, quickly took to these animals and made them their own for their own efforts. And we often tend to think about horses on the plains. Pecos Linen's book, Comanche Empire, really spells this out. Brian DeLay's War of a Thousand Deserts, so forth. Other studies have come out. But in Florida, the Indians who lived here in Florida, specifically the Indians who come to be known as Seminoles eventually, really gravitate towards this animal. And these animals are responsible really for the tribe's integrity in a lot of ways in the late 18th century and throughout the early 19th centuries, as you've got all these other European, Euro-American empires just kind of trying to collapse in around them, be it the Spanish or the Americans or the British or the French or so forth. And the tribe's mastery of this animal is what allows them in a lot of ways to fend off this European aggression, to establish their own borders, to establish economic ties, and become real players in the Atlantic exchange. You know, when you talk about Florida, one of the amazing things to talk about is how Florida's it's just two places at once. It's not just the Southeast North America. It's also part of the greater Caribbean. And this animal, right, the Seminole mastery of cow herding, of cattle economics, allows them to be real players that really scared the Spanish and the Americans into the 19th century. So that's really what I'm talking about, is how Seminoles, right, Florida Indians, you know, in North America, the first cowboys were Indians, and here they're Florida Indians. And their sovereignty was written on rawhide, you know. So showing that this animal is key to the integrity of the Seminole tribe of Florida in that time period is really what I'm trying to demonstrate.
I want you to go back, because that is just, Casey knows I'm always trying to make my classes more interesting. I want you to go back where you talked about Indians being the first cowboys.
Yeah.
You understand that will just fundamentally change how students understand everything.
Sure.
So, I mean, what happens when you talk about that?
Well, you know, the amazing thing is that, you know, when you look at, say, a Florida high school textbook, which blew my mind, because the Florida high school textbook takes a lot of pride in this idea of these cracker cowboys in Florida, these poor whites who moved in Florida. Seminole, Florida high school textbooks say the animals were introduced by the Spanish, and then it skips immediately to the Americans in the antebellum period, talking about how they raise these animals. In fact, there's a classic book here in Florida that's taught. It's a novel, but it's taught as a de facto history called A Land Remembered, and it kind of paints this glorious path of this settler colonial path past in Florida. But what we see in Florida is that it's really a land misremembered, because it was native people who formed the economic backbone, first of the Spanish missions. When the Spanish came in, they established these missions and ranches to help the colony survive. There weren't that many Spanish people here. Spain didn't have that much authority. It was native labor who made these missions and these ranches economically viable. They were native cowboys long time before you had the Marlboro Man stalking around Texas. And those traditions, right, get passed down really from what is initially Timucua and Appalachia cowboys, for lack of a better term, to eventually to the modern day Seminoles. And if you go to the reservation today, all it takes is going to the Seminole website, and they'll tell you how important cattle are to their traditions. And it's amazing to me as I got into here. First of all, how available a lot of these resources are, because the Seminole Tribe of Florida, tribal members will tell you just how important this is to their history, but also how that never got translated by a lot of historians when we start talking about the history of agriculture, the history of ranching. And really, in a lot of ways, when we think about the West, I tend to think about Florida as really the first West, because when we think about like American processes, if we're going to talk about an American story for a second, of displacement of native peoples and the role of cattle and horses playing all of that in, say, the 1850s, 60s, 70s, 80s. A lot of those processes happen in Florida first. But to double back, this has always been an indigenous story. My dissertation and the first manuscript will focus in on indigenous people, drawing from indigenous traditions, drawing from the stories that modern tribal members have been gracious enough to share with me, their feelings towards their history and their experiences, and backed up by the archival record.
Oh, I love it.
So how did you become the ethnographer for the Seminole Tribe of Florida? And for our listeners who may not know what that is, could you explain what ethnography does?
Sure. So right now, what's going on down here in Florida is that the Army Corps of Engineers is in the midst of a massive restoration project in the Everglades. It's called Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Project. And here's the reality of South Florida, is that Native people, the Seminole Tribe of Florida, are the oldest custodians of the land. They have been here in Florida since time immemorial. And the Seminole Tribe of Florida has been trying to work with the Army Corps of Engineers, saying, look, we want to be your partners in this, because the reality is this: you cannot have the Everglades without the Seminole Tribe of Florida, and you can't have the Seminole Tribe of Florida without the Everglades. The two are linked. What happens to one happens to the other. And because of this, if you're going to do Everglades restoration, if you're going to do Everglades conservation, the best thing you can do is talk to the oldest caretakers. So the tribe is really wanting to have their voice heard, and I think rightfully so in doing so. So the big part of how I am assisting, I'm serving the tribe in this matter, is the Army Corps of Engineers said, yeah, you're absolutely right. We haven't been doing a good enough job listening. We'd like to have your input, but we don't know. So the tribe has asked me graciously and honored me with this position to write a cultural history of the Everglades. And ultimately what I am doing is not so much writing, but trying to amplify Native voices and Native stories here of how Seminoles and their ancestors have lived here in the Everglades, their concerns about how it should be managed, and plans for the future. So as an ethnographer, that's what I'm trying to do. I am trying to marshal a lot of different stories and traditions, either from the archival record, but also with interviews with contemporary, tribal members. Because the reality is this: Seminole people are never going to leave Florida, right? The Seminole tribe of Florida is going to be here. They have always been here. They're never going to leave. And getting to at least tell part of that story is like, well, it's an honor that I never anticipated happening.
Cool. Excellent. The best thing about writing history is when, ethnographies or anthropologies, historians rarely have the chance to interact with actual people. So the best thing is if people within that group does support you and does believe in your work. Many of you scholars are too young to remember the controversy about Ramon Gutierrez when Jesus came, the Corn Mothers went away. Just hashtag that for the students that are actually listening, the grad students and early scholars that might scholars earlier in their career. You never want to be in that position. You never want to be in that position where your authenticity or your research is questioned. So it's very encouraging to hear that that the Seminoles have invited you in. So sorry, we got a little nerdy for a moment, and I could stay on the early America train indefinitely. Well, there wasn't trains, but let me switch again. Let's go to our fun, lightheartedness. We're switching back to movies. We're switching back to Hollywood. Come out from colonial America. Now, we're in Hollywood. So, who is your favorite actor or actress?
Oh boy, that's tough, right? For the longest time, it had to be Harrison Ford growing up, right? As a child of the 80s, Star Wars, Indiana Jones. He had to be. And then as I went through my I love LA Confidential. It's one of my 5 favorite films. So Russell Crowe had this amazing run, right, between LA Confidential, Perfect Mon, Master Commander, Gladiator, so forth, as an actor. Today I would probably be inclined to say Daniel Day-Lewis, just because I find his depictions to be, his role of Bill the Butcher in Gangs of New York is one of the most delicious things I've ever seen on screen. He's just amazing. So I would say him, possibly Denzel Washington is.
Oh.
When I would say that in my mind, the two my 2 favorite actors, people that I would just kind of stop to watch most anything, it would probably either be Daniel Day-Lewis or Denzel Washington. I think that both men are phenomenal, but you could make this list as long as you wanted to. Those would probably be my 2 favorite. But Meryl Streep. You watch her in anything; she just transforms. I remember watching Julie and Julia, and I think about Meryl Streep is you forget you're watching her.
Right.
You just forget Daniel Day-Lewis. You just forget you're watching the person. So, one of those 3 would probably be my my top. Those would definitely be my top 3.
Have you seen John David Washington, Denzel's son? He was in Black Klansman. He was on Ballers on HBO.
I am anxiously awaiting Tenet to come out.
Yes. Okay.
Christopher, it's got that real Inception-y feel to the film. I think John David Washington is about to blow up. Speaking of that, another actor that I really like as well, including John David Washington, Adam Driver, who was in Black Klansman. I think he can do anything.
I think Adam Driver, I've warmed up to him.
He's a real force. He's got skills, real skills.
He's not Kyle Rand as well, is he?
He is. Yeah.
That was that time. He's a real force. And then I was like, but isn't he Darth Vader?
Oh, he can do, the range, just like the other actors we're talking about. It's just it's out of control. Most people were exposed to him via Girls.
Uh-huh.
But you see his comedic stuff, you see his romantic stuff. So I think that A Marriage Story, he got really amazing reviews, and he's done a lot of great stuff. I think that with him, he's a guy that we're going to watch for a very long time.
Okay, cool. When I watched Girls, and everyone had some kind of affair with him, and then I watched Star Wars, it didn't click for me.
Yeah.
But watching the Black Klansman, I was able to go back and watch the Star Wars movies with a little bit more appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
And also he killed his father in Star Wars. I don't have time for that. But I feel like the very end of that movie, the very end of the prequel, like that final scene where he dies and his connections, connection he met with Rey. I mean, I think that was just beautiful. Okay, this is kind of a Bravo adjacent. I'm making the stretch because it still relates to movies and acting. James Lipton, from Inside the Actors Studio, passed away, and we have never quite recovered. I think Inside the Actors Studio was one of the best television shows ever. So this is a kind of play on the kind of things he would say and the Proust questionnaire that he would use. If James Lipton met you at the pearly gates, what would you say?
Please?
What do you think he would say to you? In Flip, what would he say to you?
Absolutely not. Get down where you belong.
I I wanted to put James in there.
No, actually, my favorite James Lipton moment is when it's well publicized. I think that Robert De Niro was the guest, and then Bradley Cooper was like one of the actors in the audience who asked him. And you go back and watch, and just like, go watch, there's a Silver Linings Playbook. They're in it together. I forget. Mm-hmm. It's just like this super meta thing. Just, oh my gosh. And obviously, both of those men are incredibly talented guys. So, I loved watching Lipton. He was just this great. I mean, the show was just great. I loved it. So,
I think they have a new co-host. Wasn't Kathy? Someone was the new co-host, like Kathy Griffin, the comedian. Is that her name? Kathy Griffin.
I would not want to follow his footsteps. I'd want to be the person who followed him.
It would be a hard job for anyone. But what I did watch, I said, maybe we just need to let it rest for a minute. And
yeah, you know what? If anything, Will Ferrell as James Lipton would be fun.
Oh, that would be funny. Remember that would be funny. Let me think about it. That would be really funny. The episode where Dave Chappelle was on and they had a dancing contest. I don't know if anyone saw this. And so Dave did something and James Lipton did something he never did really. He stood up, he tucked his little, he grabbed his little vest and looked at Dave and said, basically, you don't know who you're fucking with. That was one of those best TV moments too. I mean, so anyway, I just had to bring that in. Rest in power, James Lipton. I soul talked a lot. I'm just going to sit back now. I've so enjoyed this conversation.
I was happy to be here. We're having fun.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Moving.
I still don't know the baking powder thing.
Yeah, well, this will be one of the mysteries of the universe.
But now you'll never forget that it's like one leavens twice.
Just one pecan pie is all I want.
So this has sort of become like a new segment for us, talking about how guests are coping with the COVID pandemic. And so as a grad student and a dad juggling a very sudden shift in work-life balance, I'm curious to know, what have you been doing to cope?
The most difficult thing for me with this is that I have my partner, my girlfriend, who I met on Twitter, of all places, in this incredible, crazy world, who I'm just madly in love with, lives in Denver. And I'm here in Florida. And the hardest part of all of this is the fact that we are trying to do our part to keep COVID, the spread of it, down. And that means making some real decisions. So I haven't seen her since February. So in almost 5 months. And realistically, it's going to be a few more months before I can see her again. So the most difficult aspect of that is not being able to see Natalie right now. That's the top. That's, for me, that's the tough part. I mean, obviously there's difficult parts in hearing that people have lost family members or friends or things like that, obviously. But on a personal level, it's a thing that she and I just decided we were going to do. It's just, not all people will do that. But that's been the most difficult part. In some ways, COVID has, I'm hesitant to say this, but allowed me to see my kids more. My two boys live split time between myself and my ex-wife, who's this amazing woman in her own right. She's a terrific mom, but she lives 2 hours away. And so prior to this, what would happen is my boys would come over to me on the weekends and so forth. But now with COVID, since March, we've had an alternating week on, week off. She's an attorney. She needs to be able to think. I need to be able to think over here as well. So it's actually been very good. So this whole time we've been talking, I can hear my boys watching Star Wars in the background. And I get to play with my guys and so forth. So that's, in a lot of ways, that's trying to make the most of this as best I could, which meant that in the case of COVID, which is terrible, I'm trying to find some good in it, which means that I can be with my boys even more. It's tough though, you get up. My first priority in life is always going to be my children. Thankfully, they're in the age right now where they're 8 and 12 and they want to sleep till forever. So that's okay. But I'm also in the position right now. The difficult part is, everything is shut down. But as an academic, I can kind of do my work here from the house. So I get up, I work from 8 till 6, 8 till 7, sometimes later. As a scholar, you just kind of work until your brain turns off. Sometimes it turns off at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Sometimes it never turns on, But when it's on, you kind of ride that roller coaster as long as it goes. When you feel the need that you can write, when you feel like you can write, you write. And you understand that it's not always going to be that way. Some days you just can't get it done. You understand that's just part of the process. So we just try to limit our exposure as best we can. We wear our masks everywhere we go. I try to limit. I do go to, we've got a grocery store, Publix across the street that I go to, but that's pretty much it. It's difficult because the only person I've really seen very much, is actually, my ex-wife of all people, whenever we try, and she and I laugh about this, but that's really the only person I've had much contact with other than my 2 children. I'd love to go home. I've got a grandfather who's 86 years old. He's in Kentucky. And I'm terrified of that phone call one day that I'm going to get from my mom. It's going to rock my world. But I also can't drive back home. To see him. So it's, like most everybody else, it's about making wise choices that you think are in benefit of the whole community. My work, frankly, hasn't suffered that much just because I've been able to put my head down and do, and this is what I know right now. I don't have anybody else here other than my cat, who's named after Blackbeard. So I don't have a lot of distractions. I just do the work, and hopefully one day this thing will change.
Nerd question now: is the cat named Blackbeard or Edward Teach?
Edward Thatch, one of his aliases.
Oh, so, I'm glad I asked because that would have bothered me.
No, his name, I call him Edward. I didn't want him. I didn't want another cat. My dear departed Nunu left us a few years ago. But last year, as I was moving into this place, I saw on the Humane Society a cat named Edward Thatch. I happened to have Blackbeard's flag tattooed on my left arm
Sweet.
Here. And it seemed to be a sign. So, and also, it made the house more like a home for my 2 boys. So Edward is napping about 12 feet away from me on one of my chairs. So
has COVID changed your TV viewing experience? Has it taken on a new significance? Has Historians of the Movie taken on a new significance because of all this?
Well, a bit, yeah, I think so. In the regard that certainly there's no sporting events. People can't watch the game right now. And certainly earlier in this thing back in March and April, we were running HATM 3 times a week, like Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And then I just couldn't contain it anymore. I was exhausted, Building HATM to where we've got it now, we've got HATM on 3 different continents. We've got HATM AUS, which is in Australia, and HATM UK. So, there are 3 different, and I'm trying to run HATM and then roughly just kind of keep an eye on the other two chapters because people down in Australia and in the UK are phenomenal scholars who are doing awesome stuff with those branches. But I tried to make it a little bit more available so people had something else to do. But frankly, just showing it once per week is exhausting for me. I don't get a chance to watch TV. I haven't had cable in years because that when you're dissertating, you just don't have a lot of other time. Sometimes, as much time as I devote to HATM, I don't want to watch a lot of other TV. Frankly, it's just the thing that my partner Natalie and I do is we watch a lot of documentaries on like the Patagonia website
Yes.
about dam building, fisheries, any number of things where we both are outdoors people. So she and I like to watch a lot of that. This is a way to like, we can't actually get outdoors. At least Patagonia is making it available online. So that's what we do. But it hasn't really changed me a whole lot because I kind of cut the cable a few years ago. And now when I go to a friend's house who has it, I find myself looking at a remote like, what's this? What do you do?
Yeah.
What,
So what's your top pandemic recommendation then? Of any either film or if this is Chasing Giants, like what
Or like
is
if you have a series you've gotten into.
a series, like if you want the audience to leave with one recommendation, and me, because I love watching TV and movies, what is one thing you want to leave us with?
Okay, so actually, there's this great show. I was going to tell you Riding Giants, which is my favorite film. Right, amazing documentary. Go watch Riding Giants. It's amazing. It's beautiful soundtrack. I'm probably going to watch it tonight. Now I found this great short documentary series on Amazon Prime called V is for Vino, which is with this guy. He's a younger guy, early 30s. Who's a sommelier, but he's kind of taking us through wine in a way that is fun, a little bit nerdy, but super inviting. So I would tell you that, or The Chef Show, which Natalie and I watch religiously with Jon Favreau. That's on Netflix. We watch lots of cooking and wine shows. So I would tell you either Vias for Vino or The Chef Show, because there's always time to watch cooking or wine.
Have you seen the Psalm series?
Oh, we started to watch some of that, I think.
You need to finish the Psalm series. Psalm 1 is a masterpiece unto itself. The re-psalming, Psalm 2, is like they're all really different movies, but the first Psalm in particular, and the third one to a lesser extent, is really a case study in like, especially as like an ethnographer, this is right up your alley of like a study of a group of people going through a challenge and like their development as sommeliers. It's despite what I like my lack of wine knowledge, I am such a fan of the Psalm series.
Oh, that was the show. I want to say that was we watched a film. I think it was that one where it was focused on like 3 or 4 guys who were trying to go up for their master sommelier.
Yes.
Yeah, tense. And like the guys who won, you were totally shocked at who won and who did, who got the who passed and who didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that's been fun to see the second and the third come out to still kind of track some of these people. But what always,
I didn't know there were other ones.
But what always strikes me about this is what it says about colonialism and empire, right? And the spread of wine grapes at the same time. And it like, I cringe every single time. They're like, well, this is an old world wine or this is a new world wine. And I just like, the historian in me is just like, and this is going to be a problem for me.
And the way that they talk about like the history of wine as being like they use wine to talk about history, but they talk about everything except like the elephant in the room for most historians, which is like settler colonialism. Yeah. Go ahead. What were you going to say, Jason?
Oh yeah, no, totally. Because my favorite grape is Malbec, right? I want to talk about Argentina all day long.
Yeah. So and Max and I come back to the Psalm movies all the time as like a guilty pleasure, even though we try to say we don't have guilty pleasure viewing, but I always get a lot out of each new watch where I'm like, oh, I didn't catch that last time.
Let's go to the
okay.
Allegedly.
Cool. So allegedly is our segment where we get to kind of make stuff up, but responsibly make stuff up and gossip responsibly. So There was this story that broke on July 3rd in tandem with the capture of Ghislaine Maxwell. And this was all very fascinating because there was a David Foster documentary that also released on Netflix. And in this documentary, he is saying that, like, no, he did not leave his ex-wife, Yolanda Hadid, a former Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, because of her Lyme disease, right? But he was like kind of elusive and mysterious about why he left her. And then it comes out the same night that it seems like Yolanda may have been harboring Ghislaine Maxwell at one point. And so now fans have been on the internet going, did David Foster know about this connection? Is this maybe why he left Yolanda? Also, it's alleged that Yolanda only met not David Foster, but her first husband. She was introduced to through Epstein. And so this led to this question of how deep into the Epstein-Maxwell scenario is Yolanda, and then how many other housewives might also have been tangentially involved.
Oh my God. This is all alleged. There
are some gossipy news articles to back this up, and there's been lots of tweets about this. So I felt like it was within our purview to gossip.
Well, let me do a gossip responsibly. Let me throw another wrench in it, and this is a complete allegedly. This is critical fabulation. This is imagination. Let's bring it another lens into it. We don't necessarily know what Yolanda's relationship is. I did not know about the connection between Muhammad and Epstein. Is this a true thing, Casey? Muhammad Hadid and Epstein?
This was, again, part of that kind of breaking Bravo news, like, was Yolanda involved? But it seemed like it was an open secret that she was introduced to Muhammad through Epstein, in which case that was my next question. Like, does Lisa Vanderpump float in, or did she float at one point in the Epstein world?
We should also say Yolanda has completely denied any connection to Ghislaine.
Right. And then Gigi or Bella, one of them got online. I think it was Gigi, also saying my mother had no connection. But what I want to say, this is my badum bump. It doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't matter because no one is going to be, quote unquote, sweating this out more than Prince Andrew. Badum bump. Remember, because he said he didn't. He had a sweaty thing, and the girl said no, he sweated. Yeah, so it doesn't really matter. Prince Andrew is going down with the ship. I'm sorry, Prince Andrew, you're going down with the ship. I don't know. What Jason, Max, what do you think? Allegedly.
Well, I wouldn't let facts get in the way of a good story.
He's like, I'm not touching this hot potato.
Well, that's going to be my pitch to Bravo to hire me as a producer. Like, come on, what's wrong with this?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. This web seems like it has gotten bigger and bigger and super complicated. It seems like no one in that group can really escape being tangled in with Epstein or Maxwell. Foster's been married a bunch, right?
Yeah, his new wife is Catherine McPhee.
Yeah, he's like older.
Yeah, I feel like she's about 30?
Well,
early 30s.
Meghan Markle's age, right? Aren't they best?
Yeah, he's what, in the 70s or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah.
For me, I don't care, right? Are they consenting adults? Great, I don't care because, I sometimes withdraw from the fact that I say, Leonardo DiCaprio is dating a woman who's half his age or whatever. And I see when people say that at the same time, I'm like, that's kind of taking away from her, her decision making process. She's an adult; she can choose who she wants to be with. She wants to be with a guy who's 50 or old or ugly or smart or whatever. That's her decision. It takes away from her agency. And it kind of drives me nuts when people talk that way, frankly. You know, when it's like, oh, there's so much difference in age. Like,
in fact, just this week on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Erica Jane, who's Erica Girardi, married to Tom Girardi from the Aaron Brockovich case, she even was like, yeah, my type is old, rich, and very bald, right? So she is one of these women who like, right, her husband is twice her age, but she was like, I have a type, and I know I have a type, right? So more power to her.
Yeah. So, I mean, but this guy, Foster's clearly, I don't know, he seems like he changes direction every so often, for lack of a better expression. So I'm a big fan of Occam's razor, right? When you hear hoof prints, you know, I think horses, not zebras. So he kind of changes around a lot. That would be my guess. I wouldn't imagine that there would be any kind of big Shakespearean conspiracy behind it, but that's not as juicy. So I'm going to say yes, definitely. She was 100% involved. He knew about it. He helped. He left her to cover up all of these things, and in fact is soon to get on his alien spacecraft out of Las Vegas.
This is perfect.
The only thing that I found eyebrow raising, and again, I haven't really delved that deep into the out of the whole Epstein thing, this is the one thing. No, I mean, in terms of the connections with the Hadids and Ghislaine, was that I believe what I had seen in the original controversial thread by, I'm forgetting his name, I'm being a really bad historian by not citing the source, but if you type in, I think it's a private detective, Twitter, into Twitter, you type in a private detective Yolanda Ghislaine Maxwell, this guy's thread will come up. And the one thing that he showed was that the spot where Ghislaine was allegedly arrested was 11 minutes walking from the Yolanda's farmhouse. Like, it was so close in a very small town, I think in Connecticut.
But who wants to walk for 11 minutes? I mean, let's be real.
Well, she was arrested, I believe, at a
Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, at Dunkin' Donuts. So she might have been trying to walk off whatever the cream-filled donuts are there.
The thing that I'm ready for is to hear that Ghislaine Maxwell has died before anything could be found out, right? Because they said, oh, now she has COVID. So I'm ready for this next round of conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Well, her list of who's who and what evidence is too long. I mean, just like Epstein, literally knows where the bodies are buried. So you don't want to wish anything bad to come to anyone, but I mean,
I'm waiting for the autopsy to say something totally different from like what's clearly happened. And, I think I am dabbling in the conspiracy theories around the Epstein murder.
This is the one conspiracy I've hooked you into. I'm always throwing out conspiracies to Casey all the time about everything. And she usually does not bite. But this one is like...
Right, there's too many powerful people at play.
It's too weird. It's such a weird story.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I don't have anything else to say. I'm thinking about my comments about, we don't want to wish anything bad on someone. Well, you kind of are like a racist.
Yeah. I mean, if you had to wish bad on somebody, I mean...
Yeah, let me retract my comments and just be like, you made your decisions, now live in it.
We're just letting the universe fall where it does. And
Yep.
For sure.
So that one was a little downer, Casey. I like the idea. Is Vanderpump involved? Then we could get to that. Could be the reason her and Kyle really fell out.
Well, see, my theory was more that Lisa never really liked Yolanda because I think Lisa is somebody who wants to like be in these high social circles. So maybe part of it was Lisa was always kind of jealous that she's like, well, I want to be Ghislaine Maxwell's friend.
Ugh.
Right, because Yolanda was the highest of all elite circles.
Ugh.
Right, because that does seem like a Lisa Vanderpump thing to me, where she is like, there is an elite circle that I am not as inside as somebody else, and so I'm going to just inherently hate this person because of that.
Well, that makes Lisa, Brandy Glanville, and Ken fight more interesting. That means who was the young person that was living in Lisa's house for a while at the very first part, the very, very first episode, season.
Wasn't his name Cedric?
Cedric.
Yes. Yes, it's just so many questions now, allegedly.
The questions are alleged also. Not sure if they exist.
So, Jason, tell us what's next for you and what you want people to know about your upcoming work, and how can they get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
Sure. Well, if you're interested in some of my work, I've got an article coming out soon in Florida Historical Quarterly about the Alachua Indians in the 1750s and how they used animals to separate themselves not only from the British but also from Lower Creek Indians. But for historians of the movies, every Sunday night, apparently we're going to be doing The Dirt very soon. So every Sunday, you can follow me. You can find me on Twitter, also on the gram at Herbert History, or you can just search for the hashtag HATM, or look for historiansofthemovies.com. We've got a website. You can kind of check out the films we've done, the films we've got coming up, or if you're interested in more of my work or how to find other people associated either with HATM AUS in Australia or HATM UK in the UK. You can find out more on how to do them.
Thank you so much.
You kidding me? Thank you. This has been a blast. I really enjoyed it.
We really appreciate you joining us today. This was amazing. As always, you can find us at historiansonhousewives.com, where you can propose your own episode topic, ask us questions, and send us feedback. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HistoriansH. And don't forget that you can like and review the podcast on your podcast platform. Thank you, Jason Herbert. This show was brought to you with the support by Barbara and Mark Spear, Saddleback Community College, Christina Hinkle, Christina Gamperpour, Judd Merlasky, Pete Murray, Yvonne Bellardez, Cody Baker, Molly Callahan, Dr. Joaquin Galarza, Courtney Crow, Lara Loper, and Luis Asio de Dios. And remember, scholars do bravo too.
So you're going to do it again?
Mm-hmm.
This time, I just want you to say, thank you so much for saying that, Jessica. You don't have to, over.
This is giving me flashbacks of Heavyweights, where he's just like, just say you like the damn food. It's great. It's great. No, just say you like it.
I love the food. I love the food. No, God.